This meeting today to be webcast and available on the internet. As such, all those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. Can I ask that all councillors during the duration of this meeting limit discussions only to the business on the agenda and what is permissible under the adopted Code of Meeting Practice. If I could call upon Pastor Travis Lyons to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this great day you've given us, and we give you thanks for giving us those things we need just for today. We give you thanks for this incredible Shire of Narrabri. Thank you for its resources, its people. We thank you for this meeting. Just pray for your wisdom as to how to guide and govern this incredible Shire, this land that you allow us to use and to live in. And we just give you thanks for all of these. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Just like to acknowledge country. The Council acknowledges that we meet today on the traditional lands of the Kamilaroi and Gomeroi people and recognise their continuing connection to this land and pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to any Aboriginal people here today. Recognition of servicemen and women. Council acknowledges the sacrifice made by Australian servicemen and women, in particular those who gave their lives in the defence of the freedom we enjoy today. You may be seated. We've got no applications for attendance via audio-visual link. Apologies and leave of absence. We've had an apology from Councillor Clements, and we've had an apology from Councillor Campbell. Did they want a leave of absence for both of those? Yep. Okay. So can I have a mover on that application for leave of absence for both of those?
The purpose for we need to state.
Oh yes, that's correct. Work purposes for both of them, actually, from what I understand. So thank you very much, Councillor Bowen. Mover, thanks, Councillor Dickinson. Seconder, Councillor Bowen. Put that to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Declaration of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Let me just go through it. Councillors are reminded of their obligation to declare their interest in any matter listed before them. In considering your interest, you are reminded to include pecuniary, significant non-pecuniary and non-significant non-pecuniary conflicts of interest, as well as any other interests you perceive or may be perceived of you. Councillors may declare an interest at the commencement of the meeting, or alternatively at any time during the meeting should the issue progress or arise that would warrant a declaration. Councillors must state their reasons in declaring any type of interest. Do we have any declarations that need to go in the system at all? Okay, thank you very much. Items to be considered in the confidential public excluded. There's nil today for that item. We've got nil presentations. Move on to item 9, which is confirmation of minutes. You've all had time to have a look at those minutes. Do I have any questions or amendments or anything else with regard to those minutes? Any councillors? Any comments, etc.? Do I have a mover on those minutes? Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Browning. Would you like to say anything about the minutes? No? We'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 10, matters of great urgency. Nothing has been received. Questions with notice, nothing as well. We move on to item 12, which is mayoral minutes. Let me just move on to that mayoral minutes for a second. So it's been the last month or so has been fairly busy from various perspectives. I just want to highlight a few things just from my perspective. We obviously our previous general manager moved on to Bundaberg Council, and it's we really wish him obviously all the very, very best. And we've got a new interim general manager, Eloise Chaplin, who's a local, and we're very pleased to and offer you complete support as council. So welcome aboard. Had a number of other things that happened during this last month. The staff have performed the work that you've done, so I really would like to acknowledge that and thank you for that. But so that on top of also the ALGA conference, where council really did extraordinarily well. I think publicly this council, if it can become and continue to become a desirable place to work, it'll be easier for us to attract top shelf staff members. And as we move into the period where we're trying to attract a new general manager, a permanent replacement for Rob Williams, then I think the more of these things that come along, the better it is for us to attract a truly great general manager. So I think that's a great thing. Do I have any questions or comments from councillor in terms of my mayoral diary at all, etc.? Any comments or questions or concerns? Councillor Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. There was
Talk loud. It doesn't pick it up.
me.
The microphone here.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm instructed.
You're doing well, Rowan. Councillor Bowen, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's fine. You're doing
you
well.
Can hear me. Yes, very good.
I can hear you.
There was a number of discussions there about crime where you had media reports. I'm wondering if you
Yes.
could provide some actual statistics. Is this based on statistical evidence that you're presenting, or where is the derivation of the information that you're then making public?
Yes.
And what is the outcome of that?
Yes, so it was. I spoke to the obviously spoke to the media, and I also spoke to the police about that as well. As you know, regional New South Wales has been experiencing what can only be described as almost an epidemic of crime. A lot of it's been driven by social media, and I really, I strongly praise what the New South Wales government has done in terms of trying to reduce the gamification of crime, where you've got people on TikTok and kids and all sorts of stuff. The police have had some wins over the last few months in this local area, and also there's a current inquiry into rural crime that you'd obviously be well aware of, I hope. But I think we need to stay vigilant in our community of Narrabri just to make sure that crime isn't just fobbed off. We're getting a lot of people, we're getting a lot of incidences of people driving their vehicles into Narrabri. And committing crimes. Most of the crimes that seem to be occurring are occurring from outsiders, from what the police inform me. I had a meeting with senior members of the local police district only about a week ago, and our crime rate is exemplary around Narrabri Shire, which is good. It's pretty low. But there still seems to be those incidences where people think it's fair game to steal a car in one of our neighbouring shires, jump in that car, with a skin full of whatever, and come down here and commit crimes. And it really does. It really is certainly a not good thing. The police inform us that the best tactics is that people really need to lock up their vehicles. The old days of being able to leave your vehicles unlocked and leave your car unlocked, unfortunately those days are over, and locking up is the best preventative measure. But also having suitable lighting, also having cameras, that also helps the police. And of course, reporting anything suspicious to Neighbourhood Watch, reporting it to the police, and calling 000. Jumping on Facebook is not ideal. People think that the police just sit there watching Facebook, but they don't. The police, it's very, very important that people do the right thing by their community. and report crime when they see it or anything suspicious. So yeah, it was a good piece. There's been a couple of little spikes in the last month or so, but they were people largely from out of town who were just committing. But the police assure us that they've gotten right to the bottom of it, particularly a couple of little crime families having fun with their vehicles. So does that answer your question? Yeah. Yep. Anyway, well,
May I follow up? I asked the question, what evidence have
did you see my interview? Did you see my interview?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so I'm speaking
you.
about my interview. So my interview,
In your response, you said crime is actually very low.
yes,
This discussion today
yes,
is trying to suggest that it's something else. So it sounds to me that if this is a grandstand event for you to say, oh, crime is really bad, whereas in fact it really isn't. What I asked you about the evidence that you were presenting to the public, and that you clearly were not presenting any evidence, and I just think that that's a misuse of
okay. You can sit down, councillor.
on the media
Yep.
to say that things are bad in Narrabri, whereas in fact they're not.
Councillor, you obviously didn't see my interview. So what I'd suggest you do is between now and the next time we have a conversation, you watch the interview and you have a look at what I said. I didn't say crime is out of control. I just said crime is fairly low in Narrabri. We're actually very lucky, but we need to remain vigilant. So that's exactly what I said, and I'd suggest you go and have a look at the interview before you make comments. Thank you. Councillor Longmont.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just need some clarification.
Yep.
There's your mayoral diary, and well done on getting around and communicating back to us as councillors. However, I'm a bit unsure as to what happens between now and the election. What is the role of the mayor and the deputy mayor, and do they attend events and photos appear in the Courier, or are you in election mode, or are you in mayor mode, or what happens? Could someone clarify that for me, please?
No, it's a very, very good question. The legislation is very clear. I mean, we're in caretaker mode. The whole council's in caretaker mode. So the political statements, say criticising the government or doing blatantly political, making blatantly political statements is out of the question. And so just to reassure you, and it's an excellent question, that when I have been speaking to the media of late, I've actually had I've actually had Jason along with us. So along with me, and just making sure that I'm sticking to the straight and narrow and not in any way making political statements. So good question, but you're right. And as you know, as a former GM, yeah, no worries. But no, it's caretaker mode. So there's a limit to what you can say as mayor, and and obviously the deputy mayor doesn't speak to the media unless the deputy mayor gets some consent. So the only time the deputy mayor appears in my stead is when I've actually asked him to do that. So any other questions from councillors? Otherwise I'll put it to the floor. Any other comments, questions, concerns? I'll move the motion. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. So we've got no delegates reports from what I can tell there. No delegates reports in here. We've now moved to item 14.1, which is a notice of motion, net zero carbon futures policy. And this has been sent in by Councillor Rowan Baum. I will just read that notice of motion. The recommendation here is that Narrabri Shire develop and implement a net zero carbon futures policy to take advantage of the economic, social and environmental benefits of a rural economy such as Narrabri Shire, where it actively embraces and engages with renewable energy industry, developers and industrialisation in opportunities involving decarbonisation. Number two, in developing the net zero carbon future policy, Narrabri Shire Council engaged with community members and the general public who would be engaged as a standing committee of council to provide general advice and oversight regarding the net zero carbon futures policy development and execution. Council and section A is that council invites community members, including First Nations groups, to participate in various roles and forums to advise council on aspects of its net zero carbon futures policy for the purpose of ensuring that net zero carbon futures policy by co-developed by council, its communities. There's a little bit of probably, yeah, that's fine. So there's two ways we can progress with this, councillor. In order to put a motion to council, you need to explain where you're getting the money for this and what the financial implications are for that. And I'm just wondering if you'd like to make a comment about that potentially, if there's a, if there. Yes, but in our meeting procedures, in our meeting procedures, it's quite clear that you need to show all the financial implications of any kind of motion that you put up. So it's what's that? Yeah. Well, I mean. Sorry, Councillor Lamont.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just to assist, shouldn't this have been stated by management before the councillor, before it got to into the business paper, rather than getting here cold and you're calling him out and saying this is not right? Shouldn't that be the case?
When one puts, as you well know, when one puts a motion before the council, one prepares for it very extensively, potentially meeting with staff, going through budgets, thinking about the implications and really preparing it. I'd just like to, we do have a clause which is of our meeting procedures, as you'd all know, councillors, is that, and that, I'll read it verbatim. It's 10.9. It's a motion or amendment to a motion which, if passed, would require the expenditure of funds on works and or services other than those already provided for in the council's current adopted operational plan, must identify the source of funding for the expenditure that is the subject of the motion. Sorry, councillor, I'm speaking. That must identify the source of the funding for the expenditure that is the subject of the motion. If the motion does not identify a funding source, the council must defer consideration of the matter pending a report from the General Manager on the availability of funds for implementing the motion if adopted. Now, if we vote on this, I'm not sure it's legal for us to actually vote on this particular motion, or whether it is far more prudent to park this for the next meeting of the council, for them to go through the numbers and just to literally work through what the financial implications of that are. Yes, General Manager.
Sorry, thank you to the Chair. We have done this previously, so there's been a number of motions that have come up, and then the next meeting we come back with a report saying to council if they would like to allocate funds to do this, so we can do that. So the next meeting it will be a different council team. We'll bring a report saying to do the work suggested in this motion, it will take this amount of money, and I'm sure seeing this would be within Donna's team that can have a look at what consultant or resources within the team would come back to council with what that means. Because it is a notice of motion, we can't do that when the notice of motion has come in and then to this report, because it is a large amount of work. We have to contact different consultants and work out the whole scope of what that is and how much it would be. So that is an option to go forward with, which we've done on many other ones. An example of that being the Councillor Clement's notice of motion, where we went back and looked at how much we needed to budget for the investigation into the resilience planning for between Weewar and Narrabri. We're looking at the bridge, so we've done that in previous notices of motion.
So that's the situation. I mean, we could vote it. We could vote on this, but I think a prudent council and a cautious council would defer it to the next council. That's what a prudent council would do. And that's what my recommended approach would be. But Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, in caretaker mode, I'm under the impression we can't direct the next council to do anything whilst we're in caretaker mode. So I would like our compliance officer to get back to us, because this is clearly saying that this council will develop and implement this, whereas that is a directive for the next council. So I want to know legally, can we actually vote on this today? Because this is giving a directive to the next council, and I do not believe that is our decision in caretaker mode. If it was last month, if it was any time in the last 2.5 years, yes, we would have a very robust discussion about it. But unfortunately, the timely manner in caretaker mode, I think this is a directive.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll just get the manager to speak through the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no legal prohibition in the caretaker provisions for one council, or this council, say, to make a resolution that will be binding on the council after its term. Councils are essentially, even with that, yes. So council effectively is a perpetual organisation. It's a little bit like the Crown, you know, when one monarch dies, it's basically the king's dead, long live the king. It's very similar with councils, is that the resolutions of one council continue to flow on into the new term. They don't exist only for one term. So that's not, strictly speaking, an impediment to this one going through. There is obviously the issue with 10.9 though, which is a matter for the chair. My recommendation is that we act prudently, and we put it to the next council when the council staff have had some time to understand and work through the financial and other implications of this motion. I think that would be prudent. I think that would be the wise thing to do. Putting this through sort of in this kind of rush would probably not be ideal, Councillor, but I'd be interested to hear what other comments you have to make about what I'm inclined to do.
You haven't moved the motion.
No, we haven't moved it. No, we haven't moved the motion.
I would put this in two places. One is that there are two components of this. One is to develop, and the second is to implement. So an amendment would be that we instruct the council to begin the development of a net zero carbon futures policy. So in other words, that would then allow for the next council to then see that as a live motion, and as the director has said, you know, that this is a movement from one council to the next. We are just as capable of making decisions now that would be followed in the future. I see no restriction on that. I can't find any suggestion that we can. Otherwise, we shouldn't really be meeting today. This would be the fact if we are not allowed to make decisions because we're in that current mode. Then, in fact, the entire meeting would be void. So we as properly constituted body, we can actually then instruct council to continue their work, and the intention of this and the rationale for this was to begin the development of this policy, because we now have a renewable energy action plan in place, and it was revealed and discussed when I was present anyway, the consultants and also staff to say, well, in fact, In fact, that would need, in order to properly implement a renewable energy action plan, we actually need a carbon futures policy, because that underpins the development of the renewable energy activation of all the policies and things that are included in that. And I would invite the director who's responsible for that to actually provide some further discussion. The intention of this is really to begin the development of the policy so that the renewable energy action plan can be underpinned by an effective policy, and once those two elements are in place, then future councils can confidently then budget for and to implement the remainder of that. And we have no idea what that would be, but without the policy, this is just a policy. We're not actually investing a dime. There is staff would get advice from other external sources and so on and report to the next council to make other decisions on, but that's what policies do. Policies are the underpinning device, the instrument upon which future actions will be done. And the Renewable Energy Action Plan does require a policy to be implemented. This is what I'm doing right at this point. So I'm happy to make an amendment that would say that we begin the development and advise council on a future policy. That would be how I would suggest proceeding if we listen to the General Manager and so on, and perhaps and the Director as to what
if you could take your seat, Councillor. Thank you very much. And look, I've listened to everything you've said. I don't believe that this is legal. I don't believe it says quite clearly develop and implement this policy. Even the development and implementation of this policy obviously has got financial implications. So I will rule it illegal. I will rule it in breach of our code, and I will actually ask the General Manager to put it on the next council for consideration of the next council. I think that's the prudent thing to do. It is definitely something that the next council should look into. But it's at this stage, it's a breach. Quite clearly, I cannot see how we can massage this into something that's going to be anything other than financial implication. And I think that's maybe if you'd sort of come with this motion a few months ago, I think the staff could have prepared something with all of the ins and outs of this policy, but I think it's going to be left to the next council to work through that. So we might move on to the next motion. There's nothing further I need to do. I'll just make that ruling on that. That's the ruling, everyone. Sorry, it'll be for consideration of the next council.
Mr Mayor, point of order there.
What
isn't it the General Manager's determination as to what's lawful and unlawful, what's on the business paper?
You've made a point of order. If you're making a point of order, what clause of our meeting procedure?
From the General Manager,
No. If you're making, it's quite clear. It's quite clear. If you're making a point of order, you need to state Section 1511 says that if you are making a point of order, you need to actually tell us exactly where what clause in our meeting procedure that you're referring to. So do you have a clause that you're referring to, Councillor?
I do actually.
What's the clause?
It's clause 3.20, the General Manager.
3.20, let's have a look at this.
It goes on the business paper.
3.20, right. 3.20. There is no 3.20 in ours. Is there? Where's our 3. Oh, hang on. Let's have a look. The General Manager must not include in the agenda for the meeting of the Council any business of which due notice has been given. In the opinion of the General Manager, the business is, or the implementation of the business would be unlawful. The general manager must report without giving details of the item of business, any such exclusion to the next meeting of the council.
It's already on the agenda.
So what do I roll it?
Sorry, I'll just jump in. Mr. Mayor, so before the council, so the notice of motion
Yep.
would come in, and the general manager makes a decision based on that 3.20
Yep.
whether that notice of motion is lawful and can be entered into the agenda. In this case, we entered it into the agenda. However, once it's in there, as you've noted earlier in the meeting, then 10.9 comes up because the funding source was not detailed within the report. Then that's when 10.9 clause comes into place.
And
And
we
it's
defer
up
it
to
to the
the-
next meeting. 10.9,
It's not that it's unlawful.
it's not unlawful, right? Okay. It is just deferring it to the next meeting until such time as there's a funding source. So it's not taken from the agenda, it's just moved to the next agenda. Councillor,
Would the mayor like to then to withdraw your acclamation that it is not illegal?
I withdraw that, actually. I withdraw that, and I thank the clarity of that. But we will move it to the next meeting so it can be considered with the full breadth and depth required. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate the clarity, everyone. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it. Let's move on to the next one, which is 15.1, which is an excluded notice of motion. I call upon the General Manager just to quickly give her top line on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is actually a great introduction, the previous report into this report. So we did receive a notice of motion prior to this meeting within the designated time frame. However, the notice of motion was determined to be unlawful. Hence, it has not been considered, and a part of the Code of Meeting Practice, the General Manager has to bring a report to detail that there was an excluded notice of motion. Jason, do you want to speak on that any further, please? Pretty good. No, it's all right. Yeah. So that is it. That was unlawful, and the determination was given. So we received the notice of motion. We had the governance team review that, and we actually got external advice a bit about whether that was lawful or not, and it was determined that it was unlawful.
Do I have a mover of that motion, please? Councillor Redding.
Exactly. That was my clarity.
So the report's in there. It's simply asking the council to note the words in there, the background words. So that is the report. So that's just simply the legal advice that the General Manager has received. We're simply putting to the council that we note that. Thank you, Councillor Redding. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Dickinson, thank you.
Point of clarification, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, and I'm not going to quote any clauses, just clarification. For us councillors, the meaning of the word unlawful sounds as though something improper has been suggested by the notice of motion, whoever put the notice of motion up. That needs clarity, because the community out there, this business paper is the Bible. This is what goes in history for 1,000
Yes.
years past, right? So to have something like this here is a real anomaly with the Code of Meeting Practice. The notice of motion is not there anywhere. We don't know what to the extent what it is. And Mr. Mayor, I was the mover. I was the one that put the notice of motion in, and all it was a rectification of the financials that I pointed out at the meeting on the 23rd of July.
Councillor, you may
to take from
take your
9
seat.
million to 9 million.
No, take
to
your seat.
rectify an
Take your seat.
unlawful
Take
clause
your
done
seat.
by the GM.
Take your seat. Thank you very much.
Can I?
You go figure that one.
General Manager.
Councillor Lamont, in what you just said, are you accusing staff or previous staff of misconduct? Can make it very clear, the code of conduct, this is not the forum to do that. So if you do wish to make an allegation, go through the proper processes as per what's detailed in the Code of Conduct.
Mr Mayor, please let me,
Councillor
we've
Lamont.
had discussions through you to the interim general manager, and there's no accusation here at all. All I was trying to do to give council in its adoption of its financials that I raised with the auditor, which is on video, and the general manager
Councillor,
answered, right?
sorry.
So all
Sorry,
I'm trying to do is
Councillor.
get that rectified.
Sorry, councillor. We've also got another clause that we're going to be struggling with, is that councillors must put questions directly, succinctly, respectfully, and without argument. So we have to deal with the matter at hand. The matter is that council notes this report, and anything beyond that is not part of the consideration for this particular motion. We just need to be very careful. We're gone very careful about this. And it's part of our code of conduct as also councillors that we must be, we must be very careful with what we do and say in this. So let's just stick to the actual motion here. The motion here is that the council notes this report. I'm going to put a put motion. I'm going to call for this motion to be put. Without discussion. All those in favour of it being put? All those against? It is to be put. The mover of the motion, I put that the motion be put. So sorry, I put the motion. The motion is that council notes this report. What clause are you putting the point of order?
My point of order is,
On what clause?
is it reasonable practice to eliminate any discussion on a motion? Do you have authority to eliminate all discussion on a motion? Is that
No.
And can you
No.
let us know how that works?
Sorry. The put motion. Of putting the motion. Okay. Okay, so we'll have debate, or can we just put it? Okay.
And,
Yeah. Yes, I'd like to rescind the motion to put the motion to debate. What we will do is we will go into formal meeting practice. It will continue into formal meeting practice, and the mover and seconder and anyone for or against that motion. Can I just warn the councillors very much that you must stick to the motion. This is not about the legal advice. This is not about the substantive item behind there, because that's simply not the motion. The motion is that council notes this report. That's all it is. And if there's any variance from that, I'll warn the councillor. And if that happens repeatedly, there will be, there's obviously consequences in our meeting practice. So please, the council and the community expect there to be, a reasonable level of debate. Thank you very much. So the move of the motion. Yes, I'll just hand to the manager through the general manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in answer to Councillor Lamont's question around the use of the word unlawful. To the general community, yeah, the use of the word unlawful has certain connotations. So I just want to clarify, I suppose, from the general manager and management's point of view, is that there's no suggestion that the councillors that brought the original motion had improper motives or that were acting improperly in bringing the motion. Without going into detail or the specifics of the motion they tried to bring or the advice we received, the situation was the implementation of the motion is what is the unlawful part. It's not the motion itself. It was the implementation. It's something that was beyond council's legal power. So there's certainly no suggestion that any councillor has acted unlawfully or improperly in bringing that motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Townsend. Would the mover of the motion like to speak?
You got a second, Mr. Mayor? You got a second?
Yeah.
There is a seconder, Councillor Dickinson.
I will speak on this recommendation. For me, as a councillor, in caretaker mode, I most certainly do trust the advice from the staff, particularly on motions. And this report that has come back is very clear to me that this staff have looked into this motion very carefully, sought advice, and have deemed that it is not appropriate to bring to a council meeting in caretaker mode. So for me, I fully support this recommendation and I fully trust the advice that is coming to us from our staff.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Do I have any other comments for or against this motion? Councillor Lamont.
Mr. Mayor, how can one debate a motion that it knows nothing about, other than a procedural issue that council noted the report being that one-page document there from the interim general manager, 2 pages, and getting the advice on that. So I'm assuming that the advice is all about the procedure, given that the general manager determined that the notice of motion was unlawful, right, for its implementation. Is that correct? So we as councillors, you've got a mover, you've got a seconder, you've got a speaker for, you've got speakers that can speak for or against, and you've got the mover closes the motion. This is going to be a very interesting debate, Mr. Mayor, because I don't believe that council note this report that there's any meaning in us resolving to do this. There's nothing there for us to note. So it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And the law's an ass, let me say. And I rightly know through you, Mr. Mayor, the interim general manager, the manager governance, that they are following due process. There's no issue there. But here we are as councillors. Councillor moved it. Councillor Reading spoke in trust of the staff. That's fine too. There's no mistrust of staff here. It's an issue of us in a procedural way. How do we speak for, how do we speak against this other than trusting the staff and their guidance?
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments for or against? Councillor Baum.
Yes, I'm looking for further advice from the General Manager, if I may, or the Manager of Governance, as to the reasons why a motion such as this is actually not, as Councillor Lamont suggested, it's not actually an exercisable, deed that we can work on. There's nothing there to do with it. There's no evidence of external consultation having taken place apart from the fact that it's written there. There's no evidence as to what decisions were made and by whom and when. So there's no actual report that is being considered there. And I take note that Councillor Redding talked about the period of governance that we're in at the moment. There's no evidence of that, and I don't believe that that should be taken into account either. I'm not able to support this report until such time I got much clearer evidence as to what advice was.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with you. We're all in a very tricky situation. However, from the Code of Meeting Practice, as I discussed with you earlier, Councillor Lamont, the General Manager must write a report without giving details of the item of business as such exclusion to the next meeting of council. So in this case, we actually took it to this meeting of council, not waiting for the next council meeting. Putting that aside, though, it doesn't matter whether it is in caretaker or not. This would be something that would be the same decision any day of the week. The notice of motion essentially, as a part of the notice of motion, asks something that was not in council's power to do. So that was the unlawful part. And as Jason said, unlawful is a scary term. In fact, there was nothing particularly wrong with the notice of motion. It's just that it was asking, so that's something that we couldn't do. So according to the Code of Meeting Practice, it talks about the implementation of the notice of motion being unlawful, and that's what this meant. I'm bound by what the Code of Meeting Practice says, and that's why there is not as much detail in that report that you're reading, because I am not allowed to give any detail of the notice of motion in that report.
Thank you very much, Madam General Manager. Any other comments for or against this motion? That being the case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour of the motion that we note, all those against, that's carried. Thank you, Council. We now move to item 15.2, which is the resolution register for August 2025. The recommendation here is that Council receive and note the outstanding resolution register, and also receive and note the completed resolution register for August 2024. I might put it to the manager just to quickly, through the general manager, just to quickly give us a bit of a top line on that resolution register, if he could.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this report is a report that that we started to bring in the early days of this council term, actually arising out of this council's desire for an increased level of transparency around us implementing council's decisions and ensuring that the community can see that we are actually implementing what the council tells us to. So that's what this report does. I don't comment on any specific items on the resolution register, but like I said earlier in this meeting, any outstanding resolutions and actions will continue beyond the election. It's not a case that they suddenly fall away or they're no longer applicable. They'll continue to apply to this council until, unless and until such time as the elected body, whoever may be on that elected body, rescinds them if they do, and it's a very rare thing indeed for them to do that. So the council will continue to implement those actions regardless of the outcome of the election.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. Do I have any comments, questions for any of the staff members or anyone that's implied through these resolutions? Any questions? If that's the case, could I have a mover on the motion? Councillor Lamont, thank you. Councillor Browning, I think was second, thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any other speakers for or against? Put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 15.3, which is the operational plan quarterly report. Now that's for Q4 23-24. In other words, the 1st of April to the end of June, and the delivery program 6-month progress report. I'll initially put it through to the General Manager for her comments if she wishes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one is very exciting. I feel privileged to be in this seat and talk about this. It feels like I'm doing a Bradbury and stealing it from Rob, because the year has been very, very good in comparison to the previous year. So it's 70. We're sitting at 77% for the previous year, whereas the year before that was around that 66. I think it says in here. So it's outstanding achievements there, and I believe in the previous reports that have come to council, we've kept you quite up to date with the issues we've been having. So you would have noted that concrete tender at the start of the year fell over, and we've had a few other tenders and contractor issues through the year, being a majority of some of those delays. However, I do want to also note it's exciting that in the previous meeting, this council actually endorsed those 3 contracts that came to council in the realm of about $15 million all up, which gets us in a really good starting position for this financial year. So it's only going up for here. So that's all I wanted to say on that one.
Thank you very much, Madam General Manager. Do I have any questions of the floor for the General Manager or any of the team members in relation to this at all? Councillor Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is back to through you to the General Manager. You just spoke then about this exhilarating position that you find yourself in. Could you provide some much greater detail about that comment, about the fact that you see, anyway, this is your vision, that you're in a much better position, and if you can quantify that a little bit more than just say we're in a great position. Thanks.
Yeah, no problems, councillors. In many briefings and council meetings, we have discussed about being more shovel ready in projects, and a lot of time and effort was put into the development of the current year's operational plan. And you would have noted in last year's ops plan, a lot of them were 2-year or 3-year projects. So this year is the final year or the second year on a lot of those projects. So we're not starting up. We're already engaged in contracts. Things are committed, and works are ongoing. So we are in a much better position as we were this time last year, where we were prepping those tenders and putting them out to tender, and that's where we ran into issues with contractors being available and tenders falling through. Does that answer your question, everyone?
Very much. Councillor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, thank you for those comments through you to the Interim General Manager. I noticed reading through the documents with the red dots that we've been having some problems with contractors particularly. And I note on page 67 of 19 of that report, 67 of the business paper, for $100,000 like Narrabri Lawn Cemetery, due to contractor failure, this work will be undertaken by Roads Department in Q2. That's our friend out here, cemetery, or that cemetery over there.
Lawn
That one
Cemetery.
there. Okay, so I'll continue on before I need anyone to talk. On page 20 of the report, it says there in the bottom there, contract has been awarded with construction set to commence on July 24. Delay caused due to contract failing through earlier in 23-24. That's 430,000. And finally, on page 23 of the report, it says down here, with Shire-wide curb and guttering replacement programs, contract advertised and failed to be awarded due to budgetary constraints. Package now to be completed in-house during 2024-25. My point is this: day labour, properly trained, can do minor things like curb and guttering and concrete causeways and things like that. You don't need contractors, and you're giving jobs for people in the community that are semi-skilled or unskilled that could be trained up to do this. Are we looking that way at all?
To the General Manager.
Thank you. We are definitely on the same page there. Our team is completing the curb and gutter contract. So when it was first put out during the year, it was because of resources. That team was on Pilliga Road. However, now we've finished most of those roadworks on Pilliga Road, they can jump on and do curb and gutter. They're getting trained up by a person who is a contractor, but they've come in and they're doing that site supervision, and he's an expert at that concreting work. So he's training up our workforce. We also had, which I detailed at the meeting when that tender came to council, that we had successful recruitment of about 5 road service worker ones, so that those team members meant that this could happen. So that is the vision of doing it in-house.
Thank you very much, Madam General Manager. Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight, we've had several discussions at briefing. Perhaps if a councillor attended the briefings or committees, they would know that information. That is why the last one we are doing it in-house, because the same as our General Manager has just stated, we saw the issue, we've rectified what we can whilst training in-house, and it has been discussed.
Sorry, Councillor, I'm just going to, we've just got to be very careful not to make it personal. Like, just keep it, thank you. No, I get that, but I'll, any other comments or concerns? Any other comments or concerns? Councillor Dickinson?
Yes, I'm just wondering where Resilience New South Wales fits in here. If we could ask the General Manager if anything's happening there with Resilience New South Wales, and should they actually change their name to Resistance New South Wales? Because it seems to be taking a inordinate amount of time to get any flood damage.
Talking about the flood damage released. To the General Manager. Okay.
In terms of the works, I'll discuss that, and Donna has some news to share as well. So it's actually called the Reconstruction Authority now, Councillor, formerly Resilience. So them as well as the federal government have the
Councillors.
DFRA, so disaster funding arrangements. And that is that's the book we have to play by. So
Councillors,
we have
Councillors, the General Manager is speaking. Sorry.
$32 million worth of works sitting with Transport for New South Wales, and we're waiting on those approvals still. So they have as a priority the gravel package, so the unsealed flood damage package. We have about 7 different packages we've put with them, and that one they're reviewing as an urgent package to get back to us. However, they still are reviewing the rates and scope and quantities within that package.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Through the General Manager to the Director.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Through the General Manager, just to bring to Councillors' attention, I attended a hearing on Friday in the Legislative Assembly of New South Wales Parliament House in terms of the review of the Reconstruction Authority Act. The issue surrounding the financial impost on an impact on councils, particularly such as ours, around outstanding flood approvals and payments, was highlighted in front of the committee. Appeared alongside Warren Shire Council, who also had a similar experience with their outstanding flood approvals and the financial impact. So hopefully we'll see some affirmative action come out of that advocacy opportunity.
Thank you very much, Madam Director. Through the General Manager. Councillor Redding.
Yeah, I just have a question. I'm hoping someone can provide me with the information. On page 28 of the report and 76 of the business paper, I've just noticed going through a couple of these that have not been achieved with the red traffic lights, but we have an amount in the progress, and it's 50%, 50%, 85%. We have a budget and an amended budget, but we don't have any year-to-date expenditure. If we've completed 50% of that project, why do we not have any year-to-date expenditure? Is it just the timing of the report? Is it?
Yes. Thank you very much, Councillor. Through the General Manager to the Acting Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the General Manager. there's a couple of different reasons in there. One is the commitments weren't shown in this report. So if there's commitments in there, it's not actually shown. So you could be 50% through and there could be a purchase order for the whole project and it hasn't been actually put in. Some of it is that the report was done slightly earlier to the final finish off. So there's a couple of ones in there that why you see that sporadically through it.
Right.
Thank you very much, Evan. I did wonder
Councillor.
if it was the timing of the report and because this report does end at the end of June. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, councillor. Any other comments, questions at all on this document? If that's the case, we need a mover and a seconder. Do I have a mover? Councillor Redding. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Richardson. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor Redding?
No, that's fine. I'm pretty sure all our questions have been answered.
No worries. Any other councillors like to comment for or against this motion? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried. Thank you. So we've got item 16. We've got quarterly budget review, 16.1, quarterly budget review report. Through the General Manager, I'll get the Director to speak to it in a minute, but here we've got the recommendation that Council receive and note the quarterly budget review statement for the period ended 30th of June 2024. Through the General Manager to the Director, would you like to just give us a top line on this, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the General Manager. Take the report as read, please, councillors. Noting that the quarterly budget review statement is not a requirement under the legislation, it's just something we give as a nice to have and a conclusion of the year, draft though it is, draft in capital letters. There have been limited to nil end of year balancing adjustments for the usual capitalisations, impairment, depreciation, adjustment entries. But at this stage we're looking very healthy. Bar the finalisation of all those entries, which will then progress through to audit.
Thank you very much, Mr Director, through the General Manager. Do I have a mover on this motion, please? Councillor Dickinson. Any other seconder? Councillor Redding. Would you like to speak to you? No. Any other comments for or against? Councillor Lamont. That's correct, yes.
It's been my main contention all the way through. And I'm framing a question to the through you, Mr Mayor, to the Director. The accounting data that we get, is that only in relation to the accounting standards every quarter? Your format of all these figures and adjustments and that, that's to do with our final annual statements, is that correct?
You may be seated, Councillor Lamont. To the Director, through the General Manager.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Mayor, the General Manager. Currently the format for the quarterly budget review statement is in the format as it stands and has been current for the Council since before I got here. We haven't had a chance to alter any formatting, so it's currently as it stands. There's no necessary accounting standards adjustments at this point in time.
Mr Mayor, thank you very much for that. The situation is we as councillors, and particularly you, the Deputy Mayor and the General Manager and responsible accounting officer, sign off on the accounts and the auditors start.
Sorry, let me clarify. I know, sorry, just sit down for a second.
Sorry,
Sit down for a second, Councillor.
Yeah,
I know you've said this a number of times that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and all of us, We're empowered to do that. The council votes and says and directs the mayor and the deputy mayor to sign those financial statements. So let's be really clear about that.
Okay.
Now, you may resume your argument.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and for being so formal today, the last meeting of this council.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. The question I have is, how do we councillors and management find out how efficient, how effective, and whether we're going concern when all we're doing is passing reports that are geared for the accounting standards? They are not management reports. They do not reflect the number of staff. They don't show the net cost of any function. There's no income and expenditure for any of the functions to know exactly how we're going, and that's what's remiss in this council. There are other councils out there that do that. So we as council, the new incoming council, will probably follow the same concerns in order to stop this community from getting a rate rise.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lamont. Any other questions for or against this motion? We have a mover. We have a seconder. All those, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour, all those against, it's carried. Thank you very much, Council. We move on to item 16.2, which is the item here is called Carryovers, Revotes and Overruns 2024. Sorry, the Code of Meeting Practice allows for me to clarify who voted for or against that last motion. Sorry, Councillor Lamont, sorry to pick on you. Did you vote for that motion or against that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, I voted against it.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lamont. Thank you. We now move back to item 16.2, which is carryovers, revotes and overruns 2024. I'm going to read this out. The recommendation here is that council revote in 2024-25 an amount of $822,600 as identified in attachment 1 to this report from the 2023-24 Capital Works program, that council carries forward to 24-25 an amount of $8,501,786 as identified in attachment 1 to this report to finalise works not completed as at the end of 23-24 financial year, and that council reduce the multi-year capital project budgets in 24-25 by an amount of $241,483 for projects that exceeded their projected votes at 30 June 24 or were commenced in advance as identified in attachment 1 to this report. I'll call on the General Manager to just walk us through this, if she could.
No worries, Ted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll clear this up. Pretty self-explanatory report. So we've got revotes and carryovers, and then also the third category is removing money from this financial year because it was spent last financial year. As I spoke about earlier in the meeting, this council endorsed those 3 major contracts. So a majority of that money, that 8.5, is already committed. Or has to be already committed because it's a carryover. And the revotes are works that have started but nothing has been spent on them. So if you have any questions.
Any questions about this motion? Any questions or comments for clarity? Do I have a mover on this motion, please? Councillor Redding, a seconder. Councillor Dickinson. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor Redding?
No, I don't think so. It's all very explanatory in that report.
Yep. Thank you very much. Any other comments, concerns, any speakers for or against the motion?
Yeah,
Councillor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, because I thought I lost my opportunity to speak. All I want to say is, I know it's been difficult for the staff and the organisation to carry out its works as we promised the community we would do within the period of time. And that's what the reporting is about, really, so that the community understand that we are going to fulfil what we told them we were going to with our budget. And the other scary thing in that, to me, Mr Mayor, is that there might be projects that councillors might want to put in place that, no, that money's committed. But when you get to the end of the period of time, sorry, that money's committed, but we didn't get around to it, so you're missed out. It could have been re-voted elsewhere. So it's something I think going forward that future councils want to be very careful how they manage this. There's almost $10 million there. Thank you.
Do you wish to comment on that? All right. Any other speakers for or against this motion? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Takes us to item 16.2, 16.3. Thank you very much, Councillor. The item here is that Council receives and notes the monthly financial report for July 24. Councillor, through the General Manager to the Director, do you want to just give us a quick little top line on this? Just a tiny top line, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the General Manager, councillors will be aware this is a refining format month on month. When I first attended, there were no monthly financial statements being given to council at all. We're gradually working our way through a raft of accounting bits and pieces to be able to give you an income statement and a balance sheet at a bare minimum on a monthly basis. You will note that currently the actuals for the month of July show a net operating result before grants and contributions for capital purposes of about $21.8 million. That's obviously an inflated figure because of the fact that when we do our rates once a year. So we've entirely accounted for our income in terms of our rates and charges for the year. We're only 1 month in, but there's no reason for concern in any costings that we can see. Anything that we've got in terms of the financial implications in the report, I'll take as read. We will continue to act prudently and transparently for the benefit of the community and report to council on anything that does come up in due course.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. Through the GM, do I have any questions for the Director, Councillor Bohm?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the Director, I'm just wanting to see if I can have the Director explore a little bit in greater depth in relation to the accounting standards for grants received and so on, the income received from that, and the Director's already had a heads up to this question, but the amount that we would be normally seeing then in high interest rate times, how much additional revenue would come to those projects, because accounting standards say that in many cases that income received actually goes on to the project itself. I'm wondering whether the Director could explain the impact of that and what the future outlook would appear to be, given we've got increasing costs and increasing revenue from interest received. If I could have the Director comment on that.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Bohm. Through the General Manager to the Director.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the General Manager. Yes, you are right in relation to investments for projects that are ongoing and potentially multi-year. So Council will be aware that post-COVID, both the federal and state government were throwing wads of cash to councils to be able to stimulate the economy, increase infrastructure, and do lots of capital projects. Obviously, there's only a certain number of contractors, there's only a certain number of skilled staff to be able to do those projects at any one time. So Council will note that we have a reasonable value in terms of our investments as at the end of July in the balance sheet. Now, depending upon the funding deed will depend on whether the interest received in relation to and apportioning to the project, whether it's applied to that project or whether we can actually keep that in consolidated revenue. So, for example, the funding deed might say that any revenue received as a result of an investment for a project that we're doing in the next 6 to 12 months must be apportioned to that project. Where the funding deed is silent, then council could use those funds and we report accordingly.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Director. To the General Manager.
I just want to make a quick note. There's a bit of a miscommunication out in the community that we receive all grant funding up front. Some we do, but a lot we don't. A lot of grant funding, flood damage, and it's not grant funding, but flood damage is the same. We have to do the works, meet the milestones, and then we get refunded back, and we have to supply all that evidence to them. So we don't just have all the grant funding money in our bank accounts. We actually have to do the work, pay for it, and then we'll get it back.
Thank you, Madam General Manager. Any other comments, questions?
Mr Mayor, I have a question
Councillor
through you to the interim general manager, to the director. Where there's changes to any general ledger items that council's approved, is it the proper process for reports to come back to council to authorise those changes? If there have been changes in grants or there have been changes in restricted reserves or any movement around of any accounts, isn't that council's domain, not the domain of staff?
Thank you, Councillor Lamont. This might be a multi-headed answer. I'll put it through the director first, through the general manager, and then we might.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the general manager, without getting too bogged down in the detail, the general ledger, we don't, or council doesn't adopt a general ledger structure. Council doesn't adopt from a budget a general ledger budget. They adopt from a function. And so there's discretion within the finance section and within the council operations to be able to move items where it's needed and where things have been misallocated or need to be reallocated. Where there needs to be an item where council needs to be advised or discussed or determined, then that would be brought back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. Any other questions of the Director? We might put it. Do we have a mover for this motion? The motion is that the council receive and note the monthly financial reports for July 24. Do I have a mover? I think that was Councillor Bowen moved it and seconded by Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Bowen, would you like to speak to your motion? Any other speakers for or against? I put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 16.4, which is the investment report. I will now just get the director through the general manager just to give us a little bit of a top line. You're the star of the show right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the general manager, I don't want it to make it all about me. The nice, pretty little graph. Thank you, Councillor Lamont. I appreciate it. The graph for actual interest earned and against budget on page 235 of the business papers. The nice, pretty little dot, and I'll put my hand up and say I'm colourblind, so I'm not actually sure what colour that is. But just over $500,000 for July, and that should actually read July 24, not July 23. So I'll get finance to fix that in the forthcoming year. But we're above budget already, given where we thought we were going to be at the adoption of the operational plan. Top line, we've got. When I read the right part of the paper, Sorry, apologies. Hard to scroll when it goes this way. We took $8 million out, we put $8 million back in, yeah, I think we've got in excess of $60 million for the year. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. A seconder? Councillor Bowen? Would you like? No? As read. Any other comments for or against? No. Thank you very much. It's all those in favour, all those against. It's carried. We've got item 16.5. We've got the Crossing Theatre concessional use application. Now this is for the concessional use rate of 50% of room hire made to St Francis Xavier School for a school dance extravaganza. Do I have a mover on that motion? Councillor Redding, Councillor Dickinson, thank you. Would you like to speak to that motion at all? No?
No, I don't think so. It's a pretty standard report that we get for concessional use of the Crossing Theatre.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments for or against? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour of this? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 16.6, financial assistance for Learn to Swim participants, offsetting entry fee charges in 24-25 as adopted in the operational plan. Now, we've seen this before, councillors. There's been a slight amendment. We've also had I think a very constructive briefing session with the staff, just working through the pros and the cons, and I think there's been careful consideration and debate, a lot of debate amongst councillors. I might actually just get through the general manager. I might just get the director just to give us his top line and where we landed, and then we'll go into formal procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, through the General Manager. As a result of the motion that was put last month, and we were asked to go back and rejig some information and put it back through to Council, we're recommending that Council allocate an additional $10,000. So this month the resolution says that we allocate $20,000 of the community grants budget to fund 50% discount for children to enter all council-run aquatic centres. So that's Weewar, Narrabri and Boggabri for formal Learn to Swim classes. And we provide that for the 24-5 year, and we're proposing to commence that 1st of September.
Thank you very much, Mr Director. Any comments, questions of the Director at all? Councillor Bowen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I kind of recall in our discussions we've had already that there'd be some significant transparency associated with this process, if I'm not correct or incorrect. But a reporting, I had a feeling that we were going to do, there would be a half-yearly or regular reporting back to council on the what's the correct term, on the remits that have been made within this particular amount, given that it's a sixth of the total budget associated with community grants, and then it has that level of importance as a process. And if not, then may I suggest that we have an amendment to that would actually then to say that there'd be a reporting, and the Director might say how often would be convenient to report back to council.
Councillor Bowen, thank you for your question. I'll take that as a question and I'll put it to the Director through the General Manager.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Interim General Manager. Yes, I can commit to do that on a quarterly basis. Back to Council to confirm how we're going on the progress.
Thank you, Mr Director, through the General Manager. Are you proposing? We don't have a mover yet, but
no. Well,
but would you like to move the motion?
I'm suggesting then, if I may, that this recommendation be amended to actually then formally require at least twice annual reporting. The director has suggested quarterly. Would be really up to the director as to how difficult that would be, and what access is needed for the financial systems at the pools to actually then to report back.
So,
And that was
Councillor,
part of the discussion that we had.
do you want to move this, or does someone else want to move this motion?
Oh, look,
and then
I'm
you
happy
can
to move.
then you can
I can move. Thank you.
you can move it, and then you can also append that, and that it doesn't even require an amendment if that's the case. So you're moving it. Do I have a seconder of that motion? Councillor Richardson. So let's just get this wording right. This is, I assume it's,
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
yes, Councillor.
If we read the full financial implications, the second sentence, staff will monitor the use of the funds and be able to produce reports on the uptake and usage of the initiative moving forward. I think that takes care of it, doesn't it?
So we'll just, yeah, sorry, Councillor, I'll just through the General Manager to the Manager of Governance.
Councillor Bum, that number 3 on the screen, is that what you're moving?
I think it's a quarterly, twice yearly.
Perfect, we'll make sure that gets in there. Okay. So the motion, so Councillor Bum's moved this motion, so it included the first 2 points from the recommendation, and the councillor has added a third element to the motion. As the mover, he's perfectly entitled to do that, which is that that a report on usage be presented to council on a quarterly basis. So that's, do we have a seconder?
So Councillor Bowman, are you happy with that?
Okay. So we have a seconder on that as well.
No worries. Councillor Bowman, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. Yes, we've had significant discussion about this. I think this is really quite an elegant way to address the issues that were brought to us by the public, and I think it's quite a prudent way to go forward. In the future, we're not handing anything difficult over to the next council, and I believe that this is an effective use of the community grants budget, because it really does provide a very direct incentive and support for community to use our facilities.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other for or against this motion? Any discussion? Any comments about this motion? Councillor Reading.
Just a comment. I think actually I would like to, on this, bringing this forward, I'd like to commend Councillor Richardson for her initiative in suggesting this to the discussion that we had around the Learn to Swim programs. And I think that was a fabulous initiative, and I would like to commend her for it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reading. Any other comments for or against? It has been. So thank you very much, everyone, councillors. It was. I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously, Council. Thank you. We now move on to item 16.7, which is lease renewal, and this is the Weewar Community Arts and Cultural Centre. Quite an important icon in the Weewar community, of course, and most of us have been there, and I really appreciate the work of the volunteers down there. The recommendation here is that the council enters into a new lease agreement with the Weewar Community Arts and Cultural Centre, being permitted use, a term of 2 years with no options, charging them a rent of $1 per annum, which is obviously a peppercorn lease. Rates, nil charges to that local organisation. Outgoings are the responsibility for them. That could be, obviously a number of things that are outgoings, including electricity, etc. Finally, that the council delegates the authority to the general manager to enter into the lease agreement and execute relevant documentation. Do I have a mover on that motion? Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Dickinson. Thank you very much. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Just briefly, I think this is a good outcome for WeWar, and I think Councillor Clements, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, would also be very happy with this outcome to progress that group in WeWar. So thank Council.
It's a great resource. Thank you. Councillor, any other councillors like to make a comment? Councillor Bowen.
Comment and a question as well, if
Yes.
I may, Mayor, through to the General Manager. I'm thinking of it, and I do support this Community Arts and Cultural Centre very much, but I'm a regular attendee of their events. But the question I ask is about, through you to the General Manager, is about governance. And I have questions about that. I'm asking the General Manager, really, is the General Manager satisfied with the governance of this entity, and would the General Manager maintain a clear oversight to the effective governance of this organisation? Sorry? Well, this is executed. The General Manager executes this. The responsibility is directly to the General Manager. Councillor Lamont can have his spray thereafter, but I'm just going to ask if the General Manager can provide some.
So the question
about the oversight of governance of these sorts of organisations.
Thank you, Councillor. The question is, and the General Manager can reply, give us her version. Madam General Manager.
Ted, please jump in if I'm wrong here. But so we have had a lease in place previously with this, so we have the experience in working with this group, and we've had no issues to date. We've been on a month-to-month lease arrangement with them since their lease finished, and we've had no issues. So from far as our understanding and our experience working with them, that we have no issues. That's all I can comment on at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, General Manager. Any other comments? Councillor Mott, did you want to make any comments or?
I was merely out of line prompting the councillor that maybe he should have said oversight rather than a direct opinion from the General Manager. I'm very satisfied in supporting the recommendation.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments for or against this motion? We do have a mover and we have a seconder. Any other comments about this motion? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We now move on to infrastructure delivery, which is item 17.1, cemeteries and crematoria New South Wales. I think it would be fair to say that pretty much every councillor on this council would be a little bit, not just a little bit, but quite annoyed at the fact that we're even having this, having to do this. I might actually just put it through to the General Manager just for a moment, but the state government have imposed on every organisation that runs cemeteries and crematoria, they've imposed what's called an internment services levy. I've spoken out about it, and I certainly know a number of our councillors are quite annoyed about this this particular levy. That the fact that it's a cost shifting exercise, as I certainly think that's what certainly ourselves believe, and most councils in New South Wales believe this is a cost shifting exercise by the government. I might just give the General Manager just a little bit of the floor just for a second, just so she can just give us an idea of how this is going to work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you would know, this came to council in June. So the state government imposed these levies, and it was late in June when that announcement was made. So it was past the time of when we did our operational plan. So a report came to the June meeting, basically asking council to choose an option about what to do. Should we just not charge these fees as a part of our normal fees, or do we increase our fees to take into account the state government fees? So we went with the option of increasing our fees by the amount of the imposed levy, and we've put that out to the community for submission, and we've received 0 submissions to date.
Thank you very much, Madam General Manager. Do I have a mover on this motion, please? Councillor Redding. Did I have a seconder? Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Redding, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I don't think so. It's a mandatory fee that we have to charge, and the acting general manager's explanation was quite sufficient.
Thank you very much. Any other comments for or against this motion? Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, just a comment, and just to reiterate to our community, no councillor is happy about this. We are appalled by the New South Wales government. We are now taxing the dead. We tax people when they give birth, we tax people their whole lives, we tax people on feminine hygiene products, and now we are taxing the dead. And it is very disappointing, and I am sorry for our community members for this fee that now has to be passed on to them as well. So hopefully the government can help us out and take it away.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other comments for or against this motion? Do we have a mover on the motion? We do have a mover and we do have a seconder. Councillor.
This tax really annoys me because it's just revenue raising by the government that we have to hand on, and it's just not something that we should be doing to families in times of distress. But obviously no one in the upper echelons of Parliament has any regard for anyone who loses somebody. So I'm just totally disgusted that we have to pass this on.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments for or against council? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thanks, and thanks for your comments, everyone. We now move on to item 17.3, which is the Wee Waa levy design, as councillors will... 17.2. Infrastructure delivery report. I was getting excited about the levy there for a sec. Sorry, I'll move back from the levy. Infrastructure delivery status report, July 24. Recommendation here is that council receives and notes the infrastructure delivery status report for the month. Just get Eloise. Sorry, I'll just get the interim general manager just to give us a bit of a top line on that. I'll go to Evan. The Director, let's give us a top line on your infrastructure delivery report, please.
Mayor through the GM. Obviously, a fairly wet month. Sorry.
You just got to hold it down. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fairly wet month, but still ticking along through most of the projects. Obviously, we're hoping we'll gear up further with a few new of the capital projects and grant funding projects that now have gone out of tender and now awarded. We should start seeing delivery in the next month to 2 months. So hopefully weather will be kind.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Any questions of the Director? Councillor Browning.
I actually asked this question earlier, but there is a causeway on the Yarra Lake Road that's actually been built up. And it's been built up by probably 200 or 300 millimetres. Causeway won't work at that height, and I'm just wondering, what can be done about that?
So, to the General Manager.
With those comments, if you can enter, we talk to the staff outside, we can enter in a CSR and we can answer for you. I don't think that's a thing we can talk about within the public forum, but our policies and procedures note that we can't raise any floodways, but we'll get the specific details off you so we can get the team to look at it and get an answer for you.
Thank you very much. Good question. Thank you, Councillor Browning. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Do I have a mover on this? Oh, Councillor Lamont.
I just have a question through you to the interim general manager who might wish to protect the acting director and answer the question. Whilst our workers' compensation and our risk management is going very, very well, I understand there was an incident out on Yarry Lake Road the other day where a contractor pulled down the power lines. I was just wondering where council stands in terms of its drug and alcohol policy. Do we test our staff on a regular basis? Do we test the contractors? And then the second part of that is when I went and looked on the policy register, on our website, I could not see our drug and alcohol policy. So is that an operational policy, or is that something that, because you can come and test councillors any time you like, your policy should say that, should it not? As well as subcontractors.
Thanks, Councillor Lamont. Through the General Manager to the Manager of Governance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have an operational protocol, which is, for want of a better term, an internal policy on drug and alcohol testing. It's the one that's that was endorsed through negotiation with the unions and whatnot. Under that protocol, yes, we do have a drug and alcohol testing program. So that involves three, I suppose, programs for drug and alcohol testing. The first is post-incident. So whenever there's an incident, a notifiable incident or a dangerous incident, we conduct drug and alcohol testing as soon as reasonably practicable afterwards to the people involved. And that includes our contractors. When it comes to the second program, which is our random drug and alcohol testing program, so we conduct, and we don't have a specific, because it's random, time frame, but we aim for at least every 6 months to do at least one round. And that can be on the basis of selecting individuals randomly. We can select teams randomly. We can select locations randomly. We can select directorates randomly. We can basically pick any cross-section of the organisation or any type of cross-section of the organisation and pick one randomly and drug and alcohol test it. So if we do that, say, for a team, that means if a team gets selected, we drug and alcohol test that whole team on that day. And then the third part of it is the reasonable suspicion testing. So if a manager or anybody forms a reasonable suspicion that somebody's at work under the influence of alcohol or drugs, there's a procedure that's followed. And if that reasonable suspicion is established, then we'll drug and alcohol test that person as well.
So final part, Mr. Mayor, did that happen out here in that dangerous incident?
I'll have to take that on notice.
Sorry, can we just be really careful about this incident, Councillor? What we are not doing is we are not inferring that this incident had anything to do with drug and alcohol. So let's just be very careful about that. So they're sort of unlinked, but you're asking it in the context of an incident. So to the Director.
I'm advised that drug and alcohol testing was conducted after that incident.
Yes, yep. No, thank you. Any other questions or concerns of the directors, etc.? Councillor Richardson.
Just a bit of a positive good news to point out our sporting fields are looking really good. So with the amount of rain, weeds and that, we've got a lot of teams that are in our semi-finals. Our Shire is looking great and hosting them, as it did on Sunday for the Boggy Roos, winning their minor semi-finals as well, may I add. It's looking really good. And I know at my personal lawn, I've been out there chipping weeds. So, yeah, a big congratulations to our Parks and Gardens team for those sporting fields.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Do you want to talk about All right. Do we have a mover on that motion that Council receive and note the infrastructure delivery status report for the month of July? Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Lamont seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any other any other speakers for or against? I put it to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We now move on to the levy, the Wee Waa levy design. We did have a briefing session. We were given a very comprehensive detail of the the detailed design in preparation, so it's shovel ready when we eventually get some kind of funding for it. So here the recommendation is that council endorses the 100% detailed design of the Wee Waa levy upgrade to be placed on public exhibition for a period of at least 28 days, and during the exhibition period call for and accept submissions from the public on the design, and that a report is returned to council following the conclusion of the exhibition period to the next available ordinary council meeting detailing the results of the public exhibition. So just to put just a bit of clarity, it is to design it. We don't have the funding for it. So I might just get the acting director through the general manager just to give us just a bit of a top line on how the process is going to proceed from here.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through the GM. Basically, this report is to bring up the levy to an AUP 1% standard, which is basically about a metre higher, which includes, say, for wavelengths and so forth from wind and so forth. So we're not saying the levy currently isn't suitable. What we're saying with New South Wales, let's say, we'd like to bring it up to that 1% standard. So that this design is to get it up to that point. It's not degraded to the point where we're below the 25-year standard. We just would like to see the increase. From going out on public display, which is also part of the grant funding that helped pay for this design, means that we are getting very close to be able to go out for grant funding, and there are a few that look like to be announced in late to this or early New Year that would meet this type of infrastructure. So we'd like to try and aim for that. Yes, fingers crossed. So we'll see how we go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director, through the General Manager. Any comments, Councillor? Do I have a mover on the motion? Councillor Richardson, Councillor Dickinson. Any seconder? Councillor Browning. Would you like to speak to this motion, Councillor?
Yes, I'm very passionate about this one. We need to get this up and going. It's been carrying on for way too long. The sooner we get the grant funding and get something started, the more happy I will become. Not that I'm not happy now, but I'll be even happier.
There we go. Any other comments for or against this motion? Councillor Bohm.
Yeah, thank you. Just directly to you, Mayor, I suppose the Director did speak there about funding. I'm just wondering whether you or others have made any representations to our local member in relation to this. Has there been are we building up this opportunity to being one that really needs to be funded at the earliest possible opportunity? This is I'm asking you, have you had discussions prior to now?
Yep.
With
thank you, Councillor.
Our local member?
Now that this has gone through the process of really evaluation and drawing things up, now I can have that discussion. I will wait until the election is over so I can make political representations, because I certainly know that the people of Wee Waa, and I'm married to one, the people of Wee Waa are very passionate about their levy bank, and as one of the other councillors mentioned, it's not as if the current levy is not functioning very well. It's just simply a matter of making sure it's up to the new flood standards as designed and described by the New South Wales government. Excellent question, but the local member will probably, I think in the last year, I don't know how many letters I've written to him, but there's been a lot of letters, and I will not just write a letter, I'll also meet with him specifically about this thing. It's a great, very important. Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions? Any other questions? Well, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? It's in the lap of the gods, isn't it? Any other councillors? Councillor Dickinson.
Just part of due process, when these consultation goes out to the public, will they see the cost?
It's a good question, Councillor.
Because then the contractors will see the cost if it comes up.
Yeah, so the cost that's contained within this presentation is an estimate. So the plan for council is to actually engage someone to do a full cost estimation. So they'll go through a bill of quantities and everything to get a really good estimate that we can put into a grant fund. Because we are dealing with in that $20 million realm. Even if we're out by a little bit, that's a lot of money. So we want to get it perfect. It is quite common. We get quotes off different, say if we have a job and we get a quote off a contractor and it turns out to be above our threshold, we need to go out to tender. We haven't done anything wrong by getting a quote off them. It's just guiding us as to where that falls within our own procurement policy, so that sometimes we even use that information from that quote to put into that tender. It's no bias, but it is information that's available.
Thank you very much. Madam General Manager.
I just hate to see what happened with our footpath and curb and gutter work happen again. That was all. I don't know if the guys out in the think they'd be able to construct a levy bank in-house. That was all.
Thank you.
I can make a comment, not exactly.
We might put it back to the General Manager. I'm not sure whether that was a question or a comment or what that was, just a hand grenade. I'll put it back to the General Manager.
I won't answer that comment specifically, but in our operation plan at the back, it has all our budgets for every single project. So any smart contractor would be able to jump online and see that. So it is available.
Councillor
The only comment I've got to make is there wouldn't be there's 1,000 concreters out there, but there's very few levy builders.
Yeah, that's a good comment, Councillor Lamont. Thank you very much for that. Any other, we have a mover and a seconder. Any other comments from anyone for or against? I'm going to put it to the floor. All those in favour, all those against. It's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We now move on to item 18.1, which is community advocacy opportunities for the month. And I think this is great that we're reporting in on this. Just through the General Manager to the Director, I'd like the Director just to just give us a top line of what things that she's been involved in, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through the Interim General Manager. This report provides an overview of various advocacy opportunities, of which there are many at the moment. And as mentioned earlier, I've also had the opportunity to provide evidence on behalf of Council to various numbers of hearings over the last month. Just highlighting the challenges, particularly in respect of cost shifting, service provision, and the other community priorities that we're well aware of. And off the back of the recent council workshop, I've crafted two draft motions for your consideration, which hopefully capture the spirit of intent of two main priorities to take back to the LGNSW annual conference. They have unfortunately advised us to try and limit our motions. It's not like the NGA ALBA conference where we can go hard and heavy with many motions. There's a bit of a cap because of time considerations and their own resourcing. So that's put forward for your further consideration and discussion, and that's always happy to receive your feedback or tweak those to make sure that they're meeting the needs of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Director, through the General Manager. Any questions of the Director, just briefly before we move into the motion? Any? No worries. Do I have a mover on this motion, please? Councillor Richardson, Councillor Bowen, seconded. Councillor Richardson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Director Osling, I've been extremely busy again this month. I think this is the third consecutive business papers where we've seen Director Osling and her team exceed expectations. The amount of work that has gone into it, and perhaps we just weren't seeing it in the business papers before, but it's astonishing, and I support, receive and note all of the several ones that you've done just in the last month.
Just absolutely. Thank you very much, Councillor. I think we all would agree. Would you like to speak? Your second? Yes, we've got a Councillor Richardson's moving and you're seconding, I think.
Yes,
Councillor Bowen.
that's right. No, I just wanted to say that we had a fairly good session on this in the absence of the Director. I've had a little bit of time to reflect on the direction that we're taking on this, and I think, and if I might suggest, and I'm not really sure how the process would be because we've partly made this decision, but in item B, and given that we're a council within all of New South Wales, I'm just wondering whether we remove the Hunter New England Health reference from this because it is really highly specific, and we are talking of all regional councils, that if we initiate an independent review into the government support for remote and rural hospitals is a much more, a much less aggressive, a much more pointed, a much more clear way for a rural council to express itself to the state about what it really feels. It is incumbent upon any reader or person who understands that motion that we actually would be referring to this. But if we're from the Riverina or if we're from some other regional, South Coast or something like this, then it has much less relevance to them because it would appear to me. And I think in terms of dealing with government, I think we're going to get a lot further if we don't get really highly directive and pointed at these issues, and that we make it really clear this is really what we're asking to do. So that's my suggestion, and I'm going to suggest that if the mover was okay to amend, or for us then, Mayor, to discuss this a bit further. Thank you.
Well, just as a little bit of a note, and I have to be a little bit circumspect on this one, but as a few of us met up with the CEO of Hunter New England Health last Friday, and heard 2IC last Friday. I certainly know the local member is also wants Hunter New England Health as out of any of the health districts he has. This is a challenging district. I feel that we are potentially making some kind of progress. But I still feel that given everything that has transpired over the last few months, the community was very adamant that they want an inquiry. That meeting of 500-600 people, they were white hot angry, and that was their motion. And I just feel it's incumbent on us as a council to support that in advocacy to the state level. And I think myself personally, I think it's not a bad thing. Whether any other councillors have got any other comments about that?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
You certainly can.
You were talking about your advocacy, or the advocacy of the local member in relation to this.
Yes.
Could you talk to us about the meetings that you would have had, direct meetings and discussions that you might have had with the local member, and what that revealed in relation to that item B?
I think what I've said is probably sufficient. Sometimes I'll have private conversations with the local member, and I think we're pretty much aligned. I think that most of us councillors have been a little bit disappointed with I'm underplaying it a bit because we need their support. We need, sometimes it's better to win things over with, they certainly know our position. They certainly know that this community is a very angry community, and certainly annoyed with certainly what happened with the pathology service. But we've asked for. We went to them with a whole list of a 6-page, 7-page document that was fed to us by members of the medical and nursing staff and various others. And we went down there with one of the doctors from the hospital, and we met with them in Newcastle, and we very delicately had a conversation with them about a whole lot of things, including the lack of consultation, the lack of trust, issues around the lack of stroke diagnostic, obstetric issues, how wafer thin the services are in our local hospitals. We did a lot of advocacy around Wee Waa Hospital, which is obviously on life support, as we know, and And it's very delicate, and I know that the health minister is trying to get as much bang for the bucks, and I really thank the health minister for the work that he's done in saving that pathology lab. The local member has done a lot of work as well, and I just I think we're at a delicate point. Hunter New England Health will get back to us as council in our the group potentially in the new term of the new council. So whoever is the mayor at that particular stage will receive a response from Hunter New England Health. And I really appreciate your question. It is, some of those things are, very, very specific around our hospital here and Weewar and Boggabri, etc. But I think the days of councils passively sitting back and not advocating on behalf of some of these services because they're not in our remit. I think those days have to be over, and I think I really appreciate that this council has been a council that has really wanted to take things to Macquarie Street and Canberra and really stood up for our local community, and I think the community has really appreciated the fact that all us councillors are united in that. So thank you. Any other comments? I know it was quite verbose. I'm being delicate about it though.
I understand your position, Mr. Mayor, and we have to be very careful we don't tread on the toes of our local members.
Yes, of course.
Federal and state.
Of course.
Because they're more powerful than us, the cost-shifted councils, right?
That's it, yeah.
We are mere little fish in a big pond. But it's great that you're trying to do something about it, but make sure we don't leave our elected higher levels behind. Question to you and those that attend the local government conferences, because since I've been elected, I think Councillor Richards and I were going down to Cessnock, I think, and not Richardson, Dickinson, and COVID interfered with us going to a conference. But are other LGAs pleading with the Minister for Health to do something about their support for remote and rural health practices? I would imagine yes. And if that's the case, shouldn't that not be the Department of Health rather than Hunter New England?
That's a very good question, and I will direct it back to the local member. Him and I have had this discussion before, and out of any of the health districts he has, this is by far the most challenging, and that's what he said. And there's been countless calls. I trust that they will probably do the right thing by this community. I'm hoping to. We're working gently with them. But there was about 8 or 9 mayors just about ready to have a media conference a few weeks ago to stand up and call for this inquiry. It's not just us. There is something about the health district that, hopefully the new CEO that I met with, hopefully she will address, and I'm looking forward to it. I was very impressed with her. I think, the Deputy Mayor was impressed. We were impressed with what, her undertaking to us. She said that she believes that Narrabri is an important hub and also express some support for some of the services out in Weewar. But it's, the proof is in the making. This community has been disappointed over and over again by the removal of services or just missing out on services that have gone up to other cities nearby or towns nearby. Gunnedah has completely missed out on a lot of things that they could have won. So I think as a council we just need to not be afraid to advocate hard and fast for our community. So it's the tricky thing is the Hunter New England Health is a massive district. It goes all the way from down Newcastle all the way to the Queensland border. It is larger than most countries, and that John Hunter Hospital is a fantastic facility, but that's a long way from Toomela. That's a long way from Weewar. That's a long way from Boggabri. And the challenges is the model fit for purpose? Is Hunter New England Health fit for purpose? And that's what they need to prove to our community in order for them to rebuild that trust. And I think the proof is in the eating, and we'll hopefully see back what sort of services they will restore to this community. But I really implore the new council, in whatever shape they are, to stick with this one and not let this one go. I think so. I'm hoping they will. Any other comments? Sorry, I've spoken a lot. Councillor Dickinson.
Yeah, look, I think we should ask the director, because she's done such a wonderful job of putting these submissions together. In her opinion, should we keep that wording in there or take it out?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through the interim general manager. Just to carry on from the conversations on the floor, I think one of the key challenges is the size of Hunter New England Health. It's a common feedback that as staff we've received from this community and also other communities that have worked out in this region. Just the fact that that health district is a behemoth, and as the mayor correctly said, it's bigger than a lot of European countries, and we do have the tyranny of distance here. But at the end of the day, I'm a servant of the councillors, so the numbers will go whichever way they go. But I've certainly got a level of comfort with the current reference to Hunter New England Health, specifically because of that size consideration and the ongoing feedback that I've received from community members.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bong.
Thank you, Mayor. That was my suggestion for an amendment, and I do wish to put it.
Yep.
I would propose that item B becomes initiate an independent review into the Department of Health, New South Wales Department of Health support for remote and rural hospitals. And I identified.
Okay, so that's an amended motion. Yeah.
PowerPoint.
So that's the entire body of the motion except that particular change. Okay. Do I have so that change? So that's an amended. You're moving an amendment to the substantive motion. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? So Councillor Bowen will just go through this in a minute, but to initiate an independent review into New South Wales Health's support for remote and rural hospitals. Is that right? So simply substituting New South Wales Health for Hunter New England Health. That's what the councillor is proposing. He will need to get a seconder, if that's possible. So Councillor Lamont, you're wanting to second that? So that's the motion. Councillor Richardson.
I'd like to speak to the amendment.
Okay, you can in a minute. I firstly will get Councillor Bohm to speak to the amended motion.
Yeah, well, it's simple enough, and I'm not demeaning your direct references to Hunter New England, but I want to talk about the audience. The audience here is all of the councils in New South Wales. So for us to be relevant, and we may actually lose a motion like this, and I wouldn't want to do that, because we're not actually talking directly, we're talking about ourselves. And I think the way to talk with government isn't to talk about yourself, it's to talk about the greater thing. And they are directly responsible for all of New South Wales. They'll make decisions about all of New South Wales. For us to be parochial, now I know it's a very big place, this region, but this is a very parochial view. And I'm just suggesting that we move away from that parochialism into something that's much higher-minded and much more clear and much easier for a government to implement. They can make it, County New England, at some stage, but at the beginning, for us to properly articulate our view to the all of the councils of New South Wales, because that's the audience we're dealing with, I believe we need to be much more magnanimous and to say this is a whole of government issue. We're asking the government, New South Wales Health, to actually directly look into the appropriateness of health services across the entire state. That's the audience we're talking to. I think we need to be appropriate in that space.
So just for clarity, Councillor, I might just give it to the floor. It's through the General Manager to the Director, just for a bit of clarity. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Again, through the General Manager, there is currently an inquiry underway through the New South Wales Parliament. I just can't exactly recall the inquiry details, but I'm happy to circulate those separately once I find the actual inquiry title. I understand that there's currently a series of hearings that are underway for that inquiry as well.
I was asked to appear before the hearing as well, so, but I won't, but because it's around election time, so it makes it awkward. But any other comments for or against the amendment? If this amendment is lost, then it goes back to the substantial motion, but that's just procedural. Councillor.
As per several notices of motions I've done in this term regarding New South Wales hospitals, police, paramedicine, all of the above, this is particular to Hunter New England Health. I can't be any more stern. You can have an inquiry into the Department of New South Wales Health and still nothing changes within Hunter New England. That is my concern. I am not happy to take out the words Hunter New England. I will be in support if there is another amendment to include New South Wales Department of Health and Hunter New England. I am not happy to take out Hunter New England. We are specifically under them, and to reiterate, yes, I understand this is a New South Wales forum, but we are sticking up for our community, and this is our community. The inquiry to the New South Wales Department of Health, I've had several done. Nothing in Hunter New England has changed. It is getting worse. So, happy to do both, not happy to take one away.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any other comments for or against that amended motion?
I'll take on board what Councillor has said, and maybe if she would be amenable to this, and if the seconder would be as well, that
you are the
that
seconder.
we have New South Wales Health and also, and in particular, Hunter New England, to add that to make that a double process. Councillor, if you would support that sort of a motion, and if the seconder would, and you would rule that as being an acceptable motion, then, or an acceptable amendment, then I'd...
Who seconded this amendment? So how would you propose the change, the amendment to the amendment, please?
Well, the amendment, just show me,
Initiate an independent review into New South Wales
Health,
in particular Hunter New England Health.
Hunter New England Health, comma.
In particular.
So in other words, we're not. I think we are calling for the whole state to look at the appropriate. The important thing is the appropriateness of the support for remote and rural specifically. That's what we're asking for. I can accept that the comments of the councillor Richardson to include Hunter New England Health.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Lamont? So the what we've got in there in the phrasing, and I assume that both of you are happy with this, initiate an independent review into New South Wales Department of Health, and in particular Hunter New England Health support for remote and rural hospitals. It's possibly a bit of a grammatical thing that we need to, massage a little bit there, but are you happy with that?
Mr Mayor, I'm in support of that, and the reason being, as you alluded to it, we are in election mode as of this evening.
Yes.
And we don't want to be seen to be treading on the toes of our state and federal members who are also being lobbied by the community, who are very concerned about this. And I think this gives us an opportunity to be part of that push, but not trying to step on anyone's toes. In case we're accused of electioneering before the council election, Mr Mayor.
Okay. So is everyone happy with the phrasing of that? Is that right? Councillor Bowen, can you just have another look at that? We don't need the apostrophe S, I don't think. It's just into New South Wales Department of Health. No apostrophe S in that. And in particular, Hunter New England Health support for you. It doesn't need that apostrophe. No. Okay, did you want to, does there need to be any more further debate for or against that motion? That's the amended motion. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. That is a substantive motion, everyone. That's what we move forward on.
Can I quickly say something?
Just to Madam General Manager.
Sorry, quickly. This is in relation to the item of business that was just passed, but I quickly wanted to have it during the meeting, noting this is the council's final meeting today, with the election coming up in September. And I think this is a perfect report to finish off council's term. As discussed in various reports during today's meeting, this council group has been highly vocal, advocating for local issues on all government levels. You have championed your local communities, and the community will see these results well into the future. So I wanted to take a moment to say during the meeting, thank you to all councillors for continuing to work together, and we council staff look forward to working with the new council term and moving on with the great work that you have all done. So I just wanted to take a moment from staff to say thank you to councillors during the meeting.
Thank you very, very much. There being no further business. 3:14 and council is closed. All the very best, everyone, councillors, and I wish you the very, very best. So thank you for your service.